Hello, world, and welcome to the Millennial Outliers podcast. I'm your host, Justin Deal, with my partner in crime, Tyler Ardron. Ty Guy, what's up, brother? How are you today?
Yo, bro, what's going on?
Not too much. Stoked for a great episode ahead for you. And we have a special guest today, somebody that's actually new to my network, came very highly recommended from a mutual friend that I love and respect. And after spending, honestly, just a few minutes on the phone with him, I completely saw why we were connected and kind of where this episode would go. So actually, I want to start with a quote that makes me think of this guest. And that is, your decisions, not your situation, dictate the quality of your life. And we'll kind of get into what that means. But our guest today is Joe Argento. So Joe is a family man at first. He's one of 7, which we'll jump into. He and his wife, Catherine, they have 5 children that range from 20 to 4. And he so beautifully put it in our conversation that his wife is the full essence of a partner in every way, husband and wife, mom and dad. And then they are business partners and owners of Mama's Meatballs and Pizzeria in Pensacola, New Jersey. They have a real estate portfolio. Joe's been in wholesaling for almost 20 years. And I love his mindset. So we had this great conversation on going from operator to owner to investor. And I love surrounding myself with people like that. A, for the mindset. B, they're typically very big picture people. And C, typically those folks are very resourceful. So Joe, welcome to the show. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Thank you for having me, gentlemen.
Yeah, welcome, man. Yeah. Welcome. Super excited to have you on.
Yeah, thank you.
So as I said, we were connected, mutual friend, Carl Ippolito. Shout out to Carl. And as usual, outside of telling me a little bit about you, he sent your social media, right? And I realized we fall into this trap a lot of times. I saw the restaurant, obviously, mouth-watering pictures. If you're in the area, make sure you get some food there. And then your personal one, it was your beautiful family, the Davios dates with the wife, vacations. And we can get in this trap where we're like, man, life is good. Life must have always been good, right? The path must have been very straight from A to Z. And that's not always the case. So why don't you take us back to kind of your upbringing, obviously being one of 7 children, adolescence. You guys can't tell with sitting down, but Joe's 6'7", so it's one of the few times that I actually feel like a small guy.
What do you think I feel like?
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to throw it out there. I wasn't going to do you like that, but since you said it. But Joe, so tell us a little bit, like, what was childhood through adolescence like for you?
So second oldest, 7 kids. My mother was naturally born American citizen. My father was an immigrant from the island of Sicily. And being the second oldest is a unique position. And it's a position that, there's, a lot of responsibility, a lot of, especially coming from an Italian immigrant family, there's a lot of responsibility put on you. There's a lot of attention to understanding our culture, our family, and where you sit, and like you have a lot of people looking at you and looking at you to do the right thing, which was not always the case in my case. I didn't always lead by example in the right way. But growing up, I mean, my family came here in, I want to say somewhere in the early 70s, 72, 73, something like that. My grandparents opened up their first pizza shop in 1976. And they built up their business, and they ended up, opening up a couple different restaurants, and we're doing really well. And that kind of branched out, and, uncles and aunts and cousins, like everybody started to open up their own restaurants. And that really didn't happen for my family because my father had health issues. He was an epileptic, and so he pretty much just always worked for family. So, and when you come from an Italian family, there's nothing really handed to you. You have to earn everything that you have. And so my father was always an employee and of family members, and it always kind of put him in a position where he didn't feel like enough. He didn't feel like, and so growing up, I used to beg him from the time I was 4 or 5 years old. I mean, we spent a lot of time with him in our younger years when he was at the pizza shop 6-7 days a week. my mom would take us down. We'd be there all day long, just spending time with him, because if not, we didn't get to see him.
Mhm.
And started begging, like 4 or 5 years old. I want to come to the pizza shop. I want to, I want to work. I want to work. I want to work. And eventually, at like 8.5 years old, one Saturday morning, he woke me up. He said, "Go do your chores and get ready. You're coming to the shop with me today." And from then, I fell in love. I fell in love with the fact that I got to work with my dad and my uncles and my grandfather and my grandmother and my aunts, and it was a family affair, and I really liked that, and I like to work too. It's like in Italian culture, sitting down and having a meal it's an experience. It's every meal matters, and sitting around the table with people that you care about and people that you love is it's an important time of day. Which even to this day, I make sure that our family sits around the table every single day. It's bringing it back to home base. It's talking to discussing problems and creating solutions, and getting everybody, making sure that everybody's all right and okay, and heading in the right direction for their individual goals and our goals as a family as well. So the food business to me is not just making a great meal. It's about creating an experience that people can share with one another. It's about getting families around tables and having those discussions, and especially when we've seen in the past decade, 2 decades, there's been an attack on the family, and so for me, the food business is not just about making great food. It's about creating an experience where people can share that experience and get to come together on that experience. So I started 8.5 years old in the business. Started like everybody does, washing toilets, scrubbing floors, washing dishes, doing that kind of thing. And then, little by little escalated to doing prep work, stuffing the menegot and, portioning things and doing, slicing vegetables and all that kind of stuff. And by the time I was 13, my uncle started training me how to make pizzas. I'd learned the sandwiches, salad, all that kind of thing. And so 13 years old, I started learning how to make pizzas, so that I could give my uncle a little bit of a break. The next year was when I was 14 years old is when my father passed away. And at that point in time, it was really, I mean, it's still, this day when I think about it, it was a really, really tough time in my life, because I didn't just lose my father, but I was there for the entire experience. I woke up in the middle of the night from my mother crying, and I woke up in a bliss, and I see my father being carried out of our house on a stretcher, the color of an eggplant, and pretty much I wanted to be there for my mom, and so I was like, I told my older brother, "I'm going to go with mom. You stay here, watch after the littles." And at that point in time, my youngest sibling was only like 6.5 months old. So, we followed it, and it was, it was a really snowy night. So it was like a foot of snow on the ground. It was just a very dramatic, like, if my life was made into a movie, it would have been a dramatic scene in the movie. You know what I mean? And, again, just not just having a father pass away, but being there for that entire experience, it kind of like really, it shook me up, And I came home that night, and something inside of me was like, I got to step up, and I got to do something. Like I got to be there for my mom. I got to be there for my siblings. But at the same time, is like, where I would try to be the right person. I was dealing with my own pain internally, and I guess when you're not really taught how to deal with emotions in a certain way, you use outlets that might not be conducive or productive. And I definitely went down the wrong path, and I made some really, really idiotic mistakes with drugs and alcohol and the wrong crowd and the wrong people, and doing the wrong things that led me to being on probation by the time I was 15 years old, and being in the juvenile system, and doing things like what I explained to you about what we call ACK weekends, what they used to call ACK weekends, where they would round up all the juvenile delinquents from juvenile detention centers and kids who were on probation or parole, and they would put us in a barn for 3 days, and they would have these Marine drill sergeants would come and PT the life out of us, you know?
Mm.
And I remember the first ACT weekend that I was required to do, I remember being there and hearing, like, they were asking, like, why are you here? Why are you here? Why are you here? And there's like kids that like tried to murder their parents and like do like all crazy kind of stuff. And I was like, man, I'm not like these guys. Like, I just, like, I'm nothing like these people. I would never do something to harm anybody in that way, shape, or form. But, my actions led me to actually, putting myself, my brother, and other people in danger, and which is the reason why I was there in the first place. And I did what was required of me. I knuckled down, and I remember we were reading the drill sergeants were reading us a book the one night, and I remember it clear as day. The one drill sergeant called me aside, and he goes, "Why are you here?" And I told him, I gave him the surface level answer. I'm here because I'm on probation, and it's what the judge, required of me. And he's like, no. Why are you here, Mr. Argento? Because you are not like these people. You are not like the rest of these kids. These kids, a lot of them have some really, really dark things about them. But I know I've been doing this for many years, and I've been in the Marine Corps, and I've been in war, and you don't have that darkness to your soul. You don't have an evil facet about you. So I ask you again, why are you here? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. But I came out of that weekend, and I was like, all right, I got to straighten my stuff out. I gotta do the right thing. And at that point in time, I had ended up dropping out of high school, and I went to work full time. I mean, the reality situation is I got 5 younger siblings. I got a mom who really was a housewife up until my father passed away, and now had to kind of go and start to build a career for herself. And I mean, a shining example of a human being. I mean, my mother, 7 kids, husband passes away, really has been a housewife for the previous, 17 years, or at that point in time when my father passed away, like 15, 16 years. And she did what she had to do. She knuckled down. She didn't have any skills. She was a high school graduate, nothing more, didn't have any college experience, had no real connections. She started as a secretary in the Wawa Corporation, for the corporate offices. And based off of that, they offered a variety of benefits. And so she started putting herself through college. She went to Gwinnett Mercy University and started putting herself so she could go from being a secretary to, start raising her status in the company and raising her income and doing better for herself. And she eventually, like, at this point in time, she's now on the corporate side of things. She's, I want to say, regional manager, where she manages finances, donations, charity work for the company for like 250, 300 stores. But it's been a 25-year process for her, and one thing I remember about that whole experience with my father passing away is my mother, even when at his funeral, she maybe let a trickle come down her cheek. She was just like, and not because she didn't feel the pain, but she wanted to, she didn't want us children to be affected like dramatically by it, and she was, I always call her, she's a rock of Gibraltar, she's just solid, man. She's just, and having that as an example, I mean, in hindsight, being 2020 vision, it allowed me to develop the mental fortitude, the spiritual fortitude that I needed to go out in the world and kind of, make my way. And I still tell her, I just talked to her the other day and let her know I was going to be on this podcast, and like, she's still my number one supporter. Still, every time we're in a magazine or we're on TV or whatever with the business, and it's like, like I said, I try to keep it humble and keep it moving, but she's still, right there next to my wife. She's my number one fan, and once I dropped out of school, I really just, put my head down, went to work, helped out around the house when I wasn't there, tried to help when I was off from the pizza shop, and I was working anywhere from 80 to 120 hours a week. And when I was off, I tried to spend time with my younger siblings, do stuff with them, take them to the movies, kind of do things that my mom really couldn't do because of financial situations. And I kind of still was dealing with my pain and kind of you would probably say like relapse in my way of thinking or life experience, and I kind of went down the wrong path again, and it took me a couple years to dig myself out of that hole. Drugs and just stupid nonsense, wrong people, and I let my ambition get the best of me in a certain way, and that really taught me a lot. Coming out of that experience is like, okay, well, there's productive ambition, there's unproductive ambition, and if unproductive ambition, I would say is blind ambition, unguided ambition, ambition that could lead you in a tomb or in jail, you know? And so after going through that and cutting ties with a lot of people, cutting ties with bad habits, I just said, I'm gonna work on being the best version of me. Which I did. I really, I started reading a lot. I remember having a dream one night, where I was sitting down in a living room across from my father having a conversation, and all I could see, I was listening to what he was saying, but all I could see is his bookshelf behind him. My dad was same, a high school dropout. He was practically illiterate, was not well spoken to, but he loved knowledge. And so like he would even have my mom, even being illiterate, because he would go to this bookstore, buy books that he thought would help him, but then he'd have my mom read them and record it so that he could listen, like it was an audio book before audio, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Free audiobooks.
Yeah, free audiobooks. And all I could see is the bookshelf behind him. And I remember seeing a few books. I remember seeing a book called Fortune at Your Feet by A.D. Kessler. I remember seeing Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I remember seeing, Tony Robbins, the Giant Within.
Okay, yeah.
I think, or that's the black and gold one. I think the Giant Within was that. And so I immediately, at the next day waking up, I went to the bookstore and I went and picked up those books. And the one that I still read to this day, literally I read it minimum once a year, is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I give that book to everyone. I give that book to anyone and everyone that I can, because it really, it led me to seeing things from a different way. And, growing up in a household where we did have like a Christian background, it kind of went in depth of some of these concepts that are biblical principles, but they're not really explained really well in the Bible, and I just, that book took off, and I still follow the principles in that book to this day. And it's really helped me tremendously, to be where I am, be where I'm going, and further and beyond. But, there's been challenges along the way, and I got out of the restaurant business for a little while and did sales and got into real estate wholesaling and became a realtor and did car sales. And I my wife kept, she was pushing me because she's like, you do good at all this stuff, you're great at all this stuff, but there's not a fire like in your soul, And my uncle would call me up from time to time and ask me to go to the pizza shop and help out like on a busy night or whatever, and I'd go do it because what the heck else do I got to do? I'm not producing, I got to be producing. So and she would see it, she would come and she'd be there, and she's like, man, this is really like, this is what you need to be doing. And so at that point in time, we decided, we're gonna either start a restaurant or we're gonna buy a restaurant. And we just put it out there. We wrote it down as a goal. We put it out there, and we said when it happens, we put a timeline on it, but we're not really stuck on the timeline. We're stuck on the end result, And we went to go visit her dad out in Lebanon County, Pennsylvania. And he's like, let's go get some pizza. So I took a drive with him, and he went to this pizza shop right around the corner from his house. And we went up, place was closed down. And it's like, all right, there's another place like 5 minutes from here. And I remember we're walking back to his truck, and there's a house right next to the pizza shop. And I turned around right as I was about to get in the truck, and there's a lady walking out of the house. And I said, Pop, hold on 1 second. Someone was just calling me to like, just go talk with this lady. So I approached this woman. Now she looked at me like, who the hell are you? Why are you talking to me? You know? And I was like, listen, you know, I see that this place is closed. How long has it been closed? You know? And I don't know. It's been closed for about 6 months now. This place has been a bunch of places. People come in, they come out. I was like, you know the owner, like the owner of the building? Or she's like, yeah. He comes. He lives around town. He comes by every once in a while. I said, do me a favor. I said, take out your phone. She kind of looked at me because it's kind of like, it's a very forward approach. I'm like, take out your phone. I was like, type in my number. You know, tell her my number. Types in. I said, text me. So I have your number. And I said, when you see the owner, give him my phone number and tell him that I'm interested in this place. And week goes by, I text her, you know, nope, haven't seen him. A couple weeks go by, nope, haven't seen him. About a month and a half goes by. And all of a sudden I get a text message, hey, the owner just stopped by today. I called him when I was outside, and I gave him your phone number, but he also told me to give you his phone number. So I was like, fantastic, you know. So get the guy's number, call him up, old Italian guy, speaks very broken English. So, you know, my Italian's not that great, you know, especially when my dad died. I just don't use it, you know. And we set a meeting, and we sat down, and I said, what's going on with this place? It's like, I own the building. There's apartments upstairs, you know, but I've tried to put people in here, and they're just not. They don't make it work. They don't make it happen. So, you know, I explained to them in my history, and it's what's really funny about it is, my grandfather had sent my uncle up maybe about 15 years earlier to me buying this place, and to go check it out as a prospective place for them to buy. And my uncle sat there for a week and working there, just trying to see if it was worth the money. My uncle went back to my grandfather. I said, nah, this place is no good. So, and I didn't find that out until later on, but I found that out after the fact when we had blown the place up. You know, we had just gone in there. We brought something new to the table that nobody else was bringing in the area. And the reality situation is, you know, I'm sure with you and your industry, and you and your industry, you understand industry standards and statistics and everything like that. And in the pizzeria industry, the average pizzeria is open 7 days a week and produces about $9,000 in revenue a week. Wow. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
Right. But that's the average. That's what the average pizzeria across the United States does. We went in there in less than a year, and we were doing nearly double that. In, mind you, a town that we had horse and buggies going by.
It's a lot of food.
Yeah. So there are horse and buggies going by. We had a feed mill in our back parking lot. Like, wow. I mean, when I tell you, we had in a 7-mile radius, maybe, I think it was like around 10,000 people in a 7-mile radius. Versus where Mama's Meatballs is in Pennsauken, and we have a couple 100,000 in a 3-mile radius. You know what I mean? Yeah. So to be able to do what we did was just, it was unprecedented. It was unheard of. And but my wife, being a Jersey girl, she wasn't really feeling the whole Amish vibe, you know. And all respect, listen, those people are great people. The people around those areas are amazing people, but it's a little slower pace than what, you know, we were used to, and a little less than what we wanted. And so at that point in time, we said, hey, you know, we're gonna get rid of this place, and we're gonna find something, and we're gonna go back to Jersey, because we had lived in Jersey at that point in time. And so we started looking, we found a place, started negotiating the deal, and something just wasn't sitting right. You know, this guy's got like 3 or 4 different places, and you know, his numbers aren't adding up. And then, you know, contractually, you know, I'm a again, I have experience in real estate and I know how to read contracts and everything. And the guy that was trying to sell us the place was trying to get a non-refundable deposit without first getting prior written permission from his landlord, whether he could sell the place or not to me, and getting approval, me getting approved for the place from the corporation. I said, man, I said, you either get the letter from the landlord or you don't. He says, I'm not doing it. I said, okay, I'm not giving you the deposit. And so we were kind of in this limbo from this place to finding the next thing. And, again, went back to the Napoleon Hill principles, sat down. What's the goal? What am I willing to do for it? What's the, when's the end result? When we have to have this by? Just went through the whole process. And I believe we had set the goal for June of 2021. June of 2021. And this was in December of 2019, January of 2020. And we just put it out there and said, I was looking at places, I was calling people, and I was like, I just put it on the back burner. I'm like, man, I got other things to do. Don't worry about buying another restaurant. And then all of a sudden, and my wife was she was pushing. She's like, oh, I want a food truck. I want a food truck. Because our first place, we had 6,000 square feet, a lot of employees, a lot of overhead, a lot of headaches, and especially in this, like where we were, it wasn't conducive. Everybody around there are blue collar workers. They want to work in factories. They want to work on farms. They want to work welding, electric, construction. They don't want to work in a pizza shop. You know what I mean? So it was really hard. I was there every single day, open to close every single day for the term of which we owned that place. And she saw that and she's like, well, I like what a restaurant can produce for us, but I don't want the commitment of losing our time with our family, and we're at this point in time, we're a young family, So I'm like, I want a storefront. She's like, I want a food truck. So we, just put it out there. And all of a sudden we find Mama's Meatballs food truck and storefront for sale. And we're like, oh man, this might be it. My wife's like, well, what are they asking for? You sort of started going through the numbers. My wife's very, very particular with the financial aspect of things, and she's like, I don't know if we can pull this off. So just let's go and see the place. Let's just do that. Let's go see the place. Let's go talk to the guy. Go and meet with the guy, the previous owner of Mama's Meatballs. Gives us the rundown. Been closed for like 9 months. He used to run it as a food truck. Used the storefront as a commissary. He's done. He's got 2 hair salons. He's got the food truck. He's got the store. Has a hard time staffing all of them. We're March at this point in time. We start talking, negotiating. We're talking March, April 2020. Right.
Perfect time.
Yeah, perfect time. But I truly, there's this quote that I love from Warren Buffett, which is, when others are fearful, you need to be greedy. And when others are greedy, you need to be slightly fearful. And so the world was scared at that time. And I was like, this is the time
to attack.
Yeah, what's that?
Time to attack.
Time to attack. Yeah, no. And what's crazy is because I was wholesaling at this point in time. And I mean, wholesaling is something that you can do virtually, and I'm making phone calls and everybody's like, the world is, collapsing now. And you want to buy my vacant property? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, come on. What are you doing with it? But it just, and so even in real estate, as in with the restaurant business, everybody started going on the defensive and I was ready on the offensive. Went and talked to this guy, told him, a little bit about who we are, what we did, what we've done, what's our experience, this, that, the other thing. And, one question I always ask is, we willing to hold a note? Just like in real estate, are you willing to hold a note? It's always one of the first questions I ask people when looking at real estate or when looking at a business. And we just looked at a business the other day, and first thing, one of the first questions, are you willing to hold a note? Why? Because it's always easier to deal with person to person and create a situation that is conducive instead of going through the bank's ways. And banks don't like restaurants. I mean, that's the reality situation. And, so Nah, I need all the money up front. I said, okay, well, I can't do all the money up front. I could probably do like, X amount down, and we figure out a payment plan that works for you and me both. That I need it up front. Okay, no problem. Well, if anything changes, let me know. Shake his hand, be on my merry way, go about my business, doing things, making moves for my family. 2 weeks goes by, calls me up. Hey man, I think I want to do that deal that you were talking about. Fantastic. When can we sit down and discuss the details? And we worked it all out and everything by June 30th of 2020. And we took over June 30th, 2020. Spent about a month cleaning things up, getting things ready, recreating the menu, getting the storefront ready, everything. And just, we opened up July 31st of 2020. And just shoot now. It's just been 3 years since we opened up Mama's Meatballs, and we have blown the doors off of any expectations that I could have had for the place. And it wasn't easy, but we're doing things, and we're in the middle of expansion. We're working to open up a dining room and expand our kitchen and continue to be able to serve our community the best that we can, the best food that we can with the best customer service. And it's really been a fun ride. But the one thing that through all of it, and it's something that you said, Justin, when we were just talking, is about resourcefulness, right? And that's something that Tony Robbins talks about. It's not the most successful people don't have all the resources in the world, but they have the most resourcefulness. And my wife and I we've thought about that, because we didn't start with a lot. Even my wife, we're talking about me here, but the reality situation is my wife was homeless at one point in time in her life, in her early life. And, she had an extremely rocky path, just like I had an extremely rocky path. And it's like, how do two people with backgrounds of, coming from our background come to be able to do what we do? And the reality situation is it's all mindset. It's by the grace of God and having the right thought process, speaking the right words, connecting with the right people, and taking the right actions,
It's definitely, I mean, a lot of the experiences, it's a ton to unpack there that you've dropped, but especially going back to your childhood, I think, you learned a lot of lessons that most people don't learn until they're in their 20s, right? You learned about self-sabotage, influence, auditing your circle, vision and clarity. I mean, most people probably listening don't even understand half of that stuff. And it was kind of forced upon you at 14 through 17, where, you couple slip ups, you take that proverbial punch in the face, but you kept moving forward, you kept reevaluating, and you had that mindset of, I'm going to better myself. I love when you talked about with the drill sergeant, and you were like, I just knew I've had that experience. I got into some trouble when I was younger as well. And same thing, you almost you feel like you have to make up a story because people are in there for all these crazy reasons. And you're like, yeah, I stabbed a guy, no big deal. Just a little street cred.
Yeah.
And you're like, nah, I got caught with marijuana. Not a big deal, right? And it's these moments you see now, right? And obviously looking back 2020 hindsight, that these all prepared you for these latter stages of life. And it's amazing to hear, because as I started, it's both of you guys were in situations that, I mean, we see most people, it goes the opposite way, right? Your wife would have never picked herself up. She had a child at 17. It's like, we've discussed that. Tyler had his first child young. I was that baby myself. And a lot of people don't make it out of the statistics of that. They never make over 30 grand. They don't get the education. They have no form of success. But here you guys are as living proof that it's the decisions. It's not the situation that dictates your life. And let's jump in a little bit with the wholesaling, because I know Ty loves talking about the real estate side of things too. So I'm pretty new in general to real estate. So can you just break down for the audience, if they're not familiar, what is wholesaling when it comes to real estate?
Selling paper. It's literally, it's finding good real estate deals, putting it under contract, and selling that contract to end user or a flipper. And I didn't even unpack that, because that's a whole nother part of my late teenage years. And I went and saw a Russ Whitney. I saw a infomercial late night and saw this Russ Whitney guy in Florida. And that's where I fell in love with real estate. I mean, I remember my father telling me young, is like, real estate and food business. People always got a place to live, and people always got to eat, right? So it's like, and those are my two things, right? And wholesaling, it's the most simplistic way of getting into real estate without getting into real estate, and it's essentially you don't have to have any credit. You have to have very little money. If the money you're spending is either for deposits, if you even have to put them, and it's for your advertising. Now, guys who are have massive wholesaling business and listening to this are gonna be like, that's not true. I spent a lot of money, but what I'm saying is when I started at 19 years old, 18, 19 years old wholesaling, I mean, it was literally going to crappy neighborhoods, knocking on doors, finding out who owns the vacant property, putting advertisements in newspapers saying looking for busted homes or things like that, and getting people to call me. And then it's a numbers game. It's a numbers game because how many people you talk to, then you have to be able to evaluate every situation, and every situation is different. Whether there's a note on the property, there's not a note on the property. Whether it's vacant, are there back taxes, are they in foreclosure? What's the situation? Are they divorced? Is it like a probate home? There's so many different situations that come up in wholesaling. So every situation has to be evaluated per situation. And then again, is you have to know your numbers. You have to understand that, okay, end value of a property or the after repair value of a property is X. Okay, typically what is the formula? Well, we're typically looking at making an offer about 35% of the after repair value. So, for simple mathematical purposes, if the property is worth $100,000 fully fixed up, max we're going to offer is $35,000, but really we're going to start probably at like 20. That's going to be our first offer. And if we have to go to 35, you know what I mean?
Yep,
sure.
And that's just a basic fundamental formula. It's and it doesn't always mean that's it's not always what happens, but you have to, because at the end of the day, if you don't know your numbers, you're not going to be profitable. And I had that happen a couple times early on where it was like, I paid money to make this deal happen. Like, took a bath in that deal. But the reality situation is, and sometimes there are deals that are killer deals that, they're very, very rare. But again, you got to play the numbers in your favor. How many people you talk to, how many how many, properties have you assessed, how many offers you make, how many offers are accepted. And then once you go and you do the title work, that's another falter in the problem is, does anything come up? Is there anything on the title that's going to hinder you from getting this to an end buyer who's going to either fix it and rent it or fix it and sell it, But wholesaling is for anybody that wants to get in the real estate game. Little to no credit, little to no money. Again, resourcefulness is your number one thing, because there are guys who have these massive wholesaling businesses. They're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in advertising and teams and this and that. And I bet you if you look at their numbers, because sometimes, and I know this from inside perspective, being a one-man show and doing wholesaling, and then actually going to try to think that I don't really know a lot and going to work for like teams that are doing wholesaling. And I don't like mean to like put anybody on blast or anything like that, but a lot of times it's a lot of fluff.
Mm.
You know what I mean? A lot of times there's a lot of fluff, and it's more ego that's involved in that. For me as a one-man show in the wholesaling game, I'm quick and nimble. I can make things happen. There's nobody I got to go through the process. I make it. I'm taking it from the original owner and to the end buyer, and I do everything in the middle of the process, and I make all the profit on at the end of the day. I make that middle ground, and but sometimes when you go bigger, you're losing margin.
Mm-hmm.
That's not for everybody, but that's from what my experience in being involved with teams of people. That was my personal experience.
Yeah. Now you and Tyler were sharing some woes of the residential side. And you had mentioned that you're really looking to kind of transition into the commercial side of things. So what's that look like?
Commercial real estate, I mean, in my opinion, and so I look at this from a couple different views. I don't know if you guys know who Grant Cardone is.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you might
Mr.
be
10X,
say if you don't know Mr. 10X, you might be sleeping under a rock. But I got introduced to Grant, I want to say about 10, 11 years ago. This was before he was who he is now. Completely, um, I don't even know how to explain it. That man, what he's done in the last decade is, everybody would call it impossible. Like literally having a net worth of under $10 million to being a net worth of over $3 billion. Like it's crazy.
That's serious
and to
work.
me, from a person who thinks in the realm of impossible, like from the realm of possibilities, like it's not impossible to me, but most people will be like, there's something crooked about it, right? But from meeting Grant about 10 years ago and knowing where he was and what he was doing and how he was doing it and what he is now, it's consistency, man. But Grant really put me on the thought process when it comes to the commercial side is, your efforts, it takes the same amount of energy to do this big of a deal as it does to do this tiny of a deal. Why are you wasting time on the tiny stuff, right? And when it comes to commercial, real estate, I mean, there's so many different varieties, whether you're doing shopping centers, whether you're doing storage unit facilities or what have you. There's so many different verticals that you can go in. And for me, I haven't really found my niche yet. Where we're at right now with the commercial side of things is we are in contract to purchase our shopping center that our restaurant is in. So once our lease is up, if our landlord decides to sell the shopping center prior to the term that we've agreed to, I have the first word refusal. And if not, I get to buy it at the end of the lease term. And for me, it's like, I look at that from my perspective as a restaurant owner, and you and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, is we've built our restaurant to be able to operate without us. And I think every business owner should really take a perspective of, if your business is reliant upon you, you are not an owner, you are an operator. And that's okay. If that's what you want, if that's where you are, it's okay. But you have to be able to identify that. And for me is really, the whole realm of the cash flow quadrant, from Robert Kiyosaki, talks about being an employee first. And then the next level would be being like a business owner, right? The whole point is to get to the investor part where you're investing your money, but you're not investing your time, right? You're creating systems that are able to allow other people to do the work while at the end of the day you collect the profits. And it takes a unique individual to get to the point where you're able to see the 40,000-foot view and create systems and processes and put the right people in place and have the right training and like thinking about all the what ifs, what if that, what if this, what if that, to be able to create that business that is going to be able to operate without you or be relying on one individual, whether it's you or any individual, right? And for me, the way that I look at this is kind of the real estate game and Mama's Meatballs. They kind of go hand in hand. Think about McDonald's, right? Who owns the land under McDonald's? Is it the franchisee or is it the franchise?
Franchise. Right? Yeah.
They own the land under and then they
the
lease.
Real estate company. They're
Yeah.
not a food company.
And they're the largest real estate company in the world.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And the reality situation is that's the way I look at it is I look at the future of Mama's Meatballs. My wife always tells me, slow down, babe. We got to look at the next 12 months, the next 36 months. And I'm like, I see 10, 20 years in the future. And so, and Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank even says it, you want to own the land under your business. You really want to lease from somebody else? No, you don't. At the end of the day, you want to have control over as much of your world, your business, your life as possible. And for me, the way that I see it is that Mama's Meatballs in real estate is the growth of my business in two different ways. If I own shopping centers and I got, let's just say like the shopping center I'm in, I got 6 units, two units are taken up by a restaurant that I built, and I have somebody operating for me, and I have 4 tenants.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we talking about? It pays for itself.
Yep.
Your margins are ridiculously, you're extremely profitable, and at the same time you have the leverage of what it means to own the real estate,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Which is why a company like McDonald's can go anywhere, do anything, influence any township, and put a McDonald's
Everywhere.
anywhere they please. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, exactly. And not saying like, I'm not saying that in an arrogant way. I'm just saying like from my perspective, I look at that and I'm like, that's where I want to be.
Yeah, the vision.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting.
And the other thing about commercial real estate too is I look at everyone in my family that's in the pizza business, and some have been in for 40 years, and some are still operating their businesses.
Mm.
And one thing my dad told me when I was young is, you don't want to be in this business. He told me you want to be in the food business, but he also contradicted himself and says you don't want to be in the pizza business because you miss weddings and you miss birthdays and you miss this and you miss that and you lose time, and you may have money but you don't have the time. And it's probably my a little bit of my personality, but I was like, I want to prove that wrong, right? And that's that's what I spent between my first restaurant and this restaurant. That's what I spent the last 6-7 years working towards, is creating systems and processes. Like, we're technically considered a small mom and pop shop, but so how many mom and pop shops you walk in that have a recipe for every single thing that you have? And I can teach that recipe to anybody that walks through the door. Has task lists for, job description, org chart. It breaks down. I have org charts, job positions, job descriptions, pay plans, task lists, front of the day, middle of the day, end of the day, prep lists, par lists. Like, literally, I have gone through and thought about every aspect of a restaurant business and all the what ifs if I was to transplant my brain into a manual and into a training system. That's what I've spent my time doing, so that I could take a step away and monitor from afar. And it's what's given me the freedom that I have, but also not just the time freedom, but the financial freedom. The more trust you have in other people, the more leverage you have in your business.
I think the policy is even more so. I don't know if you read the book E-Myth, but there's a line in that great companies aren't built by great people. It's built by great policies where average people can be plugged in to produce great results. And at your point, it is great to obviously have trust, know people and all that. But when you have everything spelled out, that you could, if we were 1 to 10 in people, if you could bring in a 2 to produce 10 results, that's, for like being sold down the line, that's where all the value is. And like you said, then you get your time back, which is the most important part of it all, especially with having a family. Yeah. But I can't stress enough those procedures. And I think that's what we've talked about in the past. It's the pandemic. A lot of people got exposed, right? For about 8 years before that, bull economy, you could be like, okay, at your job and make a killing. Then things got a little tighter and people realized either A, they have no idea what their finances are and how to really even do the projections and read it, or B, they're like, man, we don't really have any systems in place. We've kind of just been shooting at the hip. It's been working, but now, things are starting to kind of fall apart. So it's great that you've had that mindset. You've learned, obviously, from, I'm sure, prior lessons that kind of proved to you that, okay, maybe I should have a process here. And I think we learned as owners as well. It's nice when you have that process too, because now every time somebody comes in the door, it's going to be the exact same thing. Because in the beginning, when we all start our businesses, you kind of train everybody uniquely, right? Like, you think you give them all the same, but you're like, damn, I definitely didn't say this to them until the situation exposes itself. Then there's that learning lesson.
100%. I couldn't agree with that more.
One thing I want you to go into, because I'm always interested in how people kind of like find their mentors. And you had said something to me yesterday when we spoke, and I saw it on your social as well, that you've stood on the shoulders of giants. So what does that mean to you, and how have you gone about finding the people who are going to mentor you and help give you the direction in life?
I mean, I truly believe it's, God puts people in my life for very specific reasons, whether I understand what it is or not.
Amen.
And so what it really is when it comes down to people coming into my life and teaching me lessons, good, bad, or indifferent, it comes down to me being where I need to be able to receive that teacher, that mentor. And that goes with even, the gifts that I'm graced with is, again, it's never the end result that is worth the success. It's really who you become in the process of developing that. And so when I say that, I have so many people that I could shout out and give credit to. And the reason why is because I'll never stop learning. I'm an open book. And the worst phrase you could ever say is, I know, right? Because even when you think you know, you don't know. And so I would rather, doing this podcast is even hard for me. Like, I like to talk, but I don't like to talk about my stuff.
Sure.
I'd rather be on your guys' end, ask questions, and pick the brains of people to learn from them. So that's really what it comes down to is every stage of my life has come with different mentors. After my father passed away, I really took a liking to his one brother, my Uncle Vinny, who had his own pizza shop, and he's, God rest his soul too, he's up with my father, but he's been he passed away. I'm gonna say it's been a while. It's 5-7 years, something like that. But his business is still operating, and his children are now next thing. But the thing is, my Uncle Vinny, he taught me how to be with people. Out of my dad's brothers, my dad was a shy one, so I didn't really get my ability to talk to people and my ability to connect with people from my dad. I got it from my mom, but I learned how to, in my business, I learned how to communicate by my Uncle Vinny. I learned how he was as a businessman. I remember one time my grandfather telling me, one of the good things about your Uncle Vinny and why he is as successful as he is if he earns $1, he saves 50 cents. And he doesn't earn 50 cents just to save it and sit on it. He saves 50 cents so that he can build a nest to then invest it in something else that is going to continue to allow him to grow. And I remember saying that, and my grandfather telling me that, and I really took a liking to my uncle, and my uncle taught me a lot of things about business, a lot of things about people. Every person that walked through the door of his restaurant was buddy, pal, gorgeous, handsome. Like he just had it. And when I tell you, and when he passed away and we went to his funeral, I can't even tell. I've never seen anything like it. Like how many people he built such a name for himself. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Boyertown, Pennsylvania, but he had gotten so many people to fall in love with him that when we went as his family, we had a hard time getting into his funeral because of how many people were there. And it was just like, and to me, that was like, wow, he made such a massive impact in such a short period of time. And I really sit on that because I think about that as like, at the end of my life, what kind of impact have I made to not just my wife and my children, but my brothers and my sisters, my cousins, my friends, my acquaintances, or anybody that I've come in contact to. What are they going to say about me? So my uncle was really, after my father passed away, like my first mentor. And then it was these two gentlemen, Sal and Vic Mascarello, out of Hatfield, Pennsylvania. I worked for them for, I want to say 12, 13 years. After my father passed away, I went to work for them. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot from them because they were the type of guys that they had a pizza shop and they had a bakery across the street. But every dollar that they earned in the pizzeria business, they reinvested it into real estate. And they, at this point in time, I don't know how many properties they own, but it's probably close to 20-30% of Hatfield and Lansdale, like properties that are owned by, like companies. These guys, they buy properties, they build commercial shopping centers. And when they do them, I mean, you're not talking like a lot of these shopping centers that get thrown up and they're going to be knocked down in 30 years. These guys build shopping centers because when they're putting their name on something, that building's going to be there in 200 years from now. That's the way they build their buildings. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I watched them and I worked for them, and I not only learned because in the pizza business, we talk about averages, right? We talked about the average of what's in the pizza business. Now these guys, you want to talk, they have a restaurant. And they just have one pizza shop, that they started with. And that pizza shop, I want to say, seats 150 people, 4 different dining rooms, but it didn't start like that. It was small. And it was just like, what I really admire about these guys is their ability to put their head down, do the work over long periods of times, and then make the right decisions, because the restaurant business in general can be an extremely profitable business. But if you don't prop it up, if you don't if that's your only thing, then, if you don't have the right systems and processes in place, that could be a short-lived thing, because it can really burn you out. How many, spoke with a guy the other day about his restaurant and acquiring his restaurant. You know what he said? And it's what everybody says. I'm burnt out. I'm burnt out. Right. And these guys, they built a really solid pizza business and grew that and expanded that as much as they could. And then they take their profits and then they reinvest it in commercial real estate, residential real estate. And they just really, and so I watched them, and they were really a true inspiration to me to get into the real estate game. Besides the words that my father said, is I was like, these guys know what they're doing. Right. From there, I mean, once I got out of the restaurant business for a little while, I learned from a lot of people in the real estate game. Joe Evangelisi, hands down, has been a really great mentor, and not just in the real estate game, but in life in general. I mean, he is a man who is a highly productive individual, and he is really efficient in what he does. And if you aren't acquainted with him, or you're just in his social media network, you don't know him on a personal level, you can watch and you can see, like, he's efficient. And the way he builds his businesses, that the whole back end is what's it called? Entrepreneurial Operating Systems, EOS. I don't know if and man, when you
practice it.
Yeah,
my company does. Yeah.
So talk about efficiency, right? Yep. When you're running a company, talk about efficiency. And he was the one that introduced me to that concept, and really doing what I do when I talk about building the systems and processes in a pizza business, which nobody thinks you should do, Yep. And I mean, my brother-in-law, Sean V. Bradley, he's in a completely different field, but he's in the National Speakers Association. He has a company called Dealer Synergy that trains car dealerships all across. He's trained car dealerships all across the world, but mainly across the United States, how to sell more cars more often and more profitably. He's also the person that introduced me to Grant Cardone, and put me on to Grant Cardone. And he's a brilliant man. He really is. And his strategy when it comes to business, and his ability to look at a 40,000-foot view. Now, me and Sean are a lot alike, where we have the 40,000-foot view. We need a little help bringing it down to the minute details, and his wife, Karen, who my sister-in-law, she's also been a really great mentor and guide for my wife and I in business, because they have more experience than us. They're older than us. They have more experience than us. They own 7 different companies. She's been tremendous. And kind of, for Sean, she really brings the detail orientation into, their business. And as my wife does to mine, I have the vision, and she helps bring it down into the most minute detail that allows us to do what we do and kind of move forward. I mean, I can go on and on there. I have so many people that I could shout out, but I really like to, and our mutual friend, Carl, he probably wouldn't consider himself a mentor, but he's definitely an inspiration, because he's somebody that, just like you and I, we know we're faulted, and we know that regardless of our faults, that it's by the grace of God that we are able to do what we do. Mm-hmm. And he may not even know this, because I probably never told him this, but he really is a true inspiration, because regardless of the challenges that he's faced, he's always trying to align himself with our Creator. And to me, that is that's a sign of humbleness, and it's also a sense of gratitude, because when you realize, I don't got it all figured out, and I don't have to have it all figured out, but I know I have I'm being called to something, and I need to know when to align myself in prayer and align myself with the right people, and um, really let God work through me versus me thinking I got control of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Joe, this was this was an amazing hour spent together. I hope that our audience took a lot from this. Again, I think it boils down to the original statement, right? It's the decisions, not the situation, and it's so refreshing to see all that you've built. We wish you the continued success, and everything will be on there for folks to follow you. So, as always, friends, we really appreciate you coming on, checking out the podcast. Stay tuned with us. We're going to have a lot more episodes. Reminder, we're going 2 a month now, so you're going to see a lot more of these beautiful faces. But as always, friends, thank you for tuning in. Have the best day ever.
Best day ever, fam.
Best day ever. Thank you, gentlemen.